So again, welcome to the last Lunch and Learn of 2020. We have a great panel of students who have had wonderful experiences to share some helpful advice with you. I'm going to start by introducing everyone. Hailing from Charlotte, North Carolina, Troy Pryor is a senior at Penn State majoring in sociology and minoring in French. During her time here at Penn State, she has been a member of the University Park Undergraduate Association, the Delta Gamma chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and the College Diabetes Network. She has worked as an intern for the Penn State Student Legal Services, the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, and the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. Thank you for being here, Troy. Kenneth Gatton III is a senior English major from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, whose opinion commentary has been featured by the Philadelphia Inquirer, Columbia Political Review, Pittsburgh Tribune Review, and more. Over the past 3 years, he has interned for the Dauphin County Democratic Committee, the Pennsylvania House Democratic Campaign Committee, Paul Daigle's U.S. Congress bid in Pennsylvania District 11, and Pennsylvania Auditor General Eugene DePasquale's current bid for U.S. Congress in Pennsylvania 10. He currently serves as managing editor of Calliope, Penn State's undergraduate literary journal, and as an at-large member of the University Park Student Fee Board. Thanks for being here, Kenny. Ellie is a senior majoring in history, economics, and French with a minor in Jewish studies. At Penn State, she is a supply logistics Thon captain, the primary chair of Oriana Singers and the Glee Club benefiting Thon, and a member of the Penn State Concert Choir. Additionally, she studied abroad last spring in Montpellier, France, and in the summer of 2019, she worked at Harpers Ferry National Historical Park as a visitor services intern. After she graduates, she is planning on either becoming an English teacher assistant in France or joining Teach for America to teach high school math in Charlotte, North Carolina. Thank you, Ellie. Andrew Clark is a second-year master's student in HRER, the Human Resources and Employment Relations. He received his BS in LER here at Penn State in December 2018. Before coming to Penn State, Andrew joined the United States Air Force as an avionic technician. While he is no longer in the military, he has a passion for helping veterans transition from the military to the civilian workforce by making them a key demographic in his sourcing process. His primary focus is talent acquisition and recruitment. Using his experience working in several HR roles over the last 5 years, he spent his 2020 summer working from home with Microsoft as a recruiter on the global talent acquisition team, during which time he and his team were responsible for the full life cycle of 3 key requisitions, hiring individuals from the United States, Canada, and Latin America. Andrew's summer experience was step 1 of the Microsoft graduate level HR rotational program. He will be returning to Microsoft after graduation in May 21 as a full-time employee. He will then start his first of 3 rotations, each lasting 1 year in length. Thank you, Andrew. Zach is a senior economics major from North Wales, Pennsylvania, and the president of the Penn State University Economics Association. Upon graduation, Zach will be working for Munich Reinsurance America as an international graduate trainee with a focus in underwriting. Zach's interest in pursuing a career in insurance comes on the heels of 2 successful internships with Chubb and Munich Reinsurance America, respectively. Thank you all for being here. I again mentioned at the beginning that the students here in this session are welcome to add Q&A, add questions that we can ask our panelists. So I'm not talking the whole time. But just to kick us off, let's start with some general advice from all of you. What advice do you have for students right now from your own experience seeking an internship that you'd like to share?
Okay, I guess I'll go first since I was first in the bios. Great. So advice, I would definitely say I knew kind of what I wanted to do and what kind of jobs I was going to look for after graduation. which is public sector, right? So I want to work in the public sector. I want to work in law. I want to go to law school. So when I first started thinking about the things that I wanted to do, I then, kind of was able to refocus my internship opportunities to that. So, I think having somewhat of an idea of what you want to do, even if it's not like concrete, something will help you narrow down those opportunities, because there's so many internship opportunities out there, right? But, I would never be able to do what Andrew has been able to do. I'm not good with computers, but I am good with public relations. And so I was able to find a place in the United States Attorney's Office. But having some kind of idea about my strengths and my weaknesses helped me figure out, what kind of internships I was looking for.
So some self-awareness is very important in your search. Great.
Yeah, I'll just go off of that. I think it all goes into preparation. So the more you do on the front end, the more rewarding it'll be down the road. And also just be persistent. You're going to get a lot of rejection letters as you go through these different applications. I'm sure every panelist here has gotten rejections at some point or another. But it's all going to help you down the road. Yeah, come up with a plan. Don't just go into it expecting the world. If you don't know what you want, at least like what Troy was saying a little bit, try to refine things down to your major, ask advice of people, whether that be your professors, peers, or go to the Career Enrichment Network. I think all of these things taken together can really help you get the most out of your internships early on.
I would also probably go off of that as well. I think the biggest thing that helped me out was, while I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do, I was also very flexible in taking in other opportunities that maybe I hadn't thought of in the past. So understanding what I wanted to do was kind of like hard for me, because coming from a very technical job in the military to working in human resources is kind of a huge transition there. So I kind of knew that I would need to be flexible in what opportunities were there, because I had never been in HR before. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I want to do, like Troy, I originally had started wanting to go into law school and all that as well. But the more that I started in the LER path, I kind of figured out, I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'm not really into working with unionization as much as I thought I was. So it's like, okay, let me rephrase that. It's like, okay, well, HR is very close to that. So I was flexible in my thinking, and it wasn't like set in stone that I was gonna like, okay, well, I have to do this. And it actually worked out for me a lot better with having that flexibility. So having your overarching idea of what you want to do, but understanding that being flexible is going to become really important too as you go through.
I think that's even more important right now. That's a great point, Andrew, with the pandemic, is casting your net a little wider for opportunities right now.
And just to jump off that a little bit too, like I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do, but I wasn't exactly sure. And I was also it was after my sophomore year, so I had like a little bit, like it wasn't like my junior year or anything like that. But like one thing that someone told me that was really helpful was like, it doesn't have to be like your perfect internship, especially like when you're younger, like because you don't know exactly what that'll be. So even if it's like an internship that like you realize like I don't want to do this, at least it was helpful in like helping you realize that's not what you want to do. Like with mine, like I really liked it, but I was like realized what I didn't like about it too, and that helped me kind of in the future like think about what jobs I wanted to apply to and like other internships and things like that.
And I just add that getting an internship is to get an experience in the professional realm, and you don't know exactly what you want to do when you enter that realm. Most of the time when you get your first internship, it's very simple work, and you might not enjoy it. You might not enjoy the field you're working in. I discovered that after working for 4 different political campaigns. I probably don't want to work in that realm anymore. I'm actually applying to work at political think tanks now. But my first internship, which I didn't note in my bio, was for the World Affairs Council of Harrisburg. And while I wrote some articles for their foreign policy journal, little articles, I also, fetched a lot of paperwork for my boss and that sort of thing, and you get them coffee, and it's very simple. the point, even though you don't enjoy it, is to, put your nose to the grindstone, as they say, and get the work done. And you'll make contacts that will enable you to do better in the future. Maybe even change your mind and change career path.
And that's a great segue into my next question of how important is networking? And do you have any advice of coming out of your comfort zone to network with others in your industry?
So one of the school of LER, or the labor school, we have a class. It's like a career end of the your degree seminar that kind of teaches you a few things. And one of the biggest things that I took away from that was using LinkedIn to your advantage. So LinkedIn, we kind of get in that mindset. It's like, okay, well, I don't really have a lot of people that I know on LinkedIn. But the great thing about LinkedIn, and the fact that you are going to Penn State, is that you can reach out to anybody from Penn State that is maybe in a career that you're interested in, and just shoot them a message and say, hey, I'm interested in this. Can you talk to me about your experience? Now, you're going to see much more success in reaching out randomly on a professional social network like that. If you're not framing it in the way like, hey, do you have a job for me? Don't ask them like, hey, do you have a job, or do you have any opportunities? You want to say, hey, I wanted to talk to you about XYZ. I seen XYZ on your profile. And that's kind of where I want to go. A lot of people, a lot of the time, are going to enjoy talking about themselves and what the achievements they've done. So you're kind of continuing that Penn State networking and alumni network that we have that's so amazing. And that is going to be but probably one of the best things that I would say is, like, for networking wise, don't be afraid to reach out to somebody you've never met before. Find that one connection that might be there for you to make that.
I'll just piggyback off of that. I think LinkedIn is like the way to modernize cold calling. So whatever you can do to make your profile shine, do it. Be unique. Put your resume on there. Put all of your experience on there. It's really the way that in the professional realm we all view one another. And I know sometimes it can feel like we're all social media out, but take what you've learned from Instagram and Twitter and put it over there and really put your best foot forward. And just as far as networking more generally, I'd almost split it into two categories. There's the networking that goes on within your circle, whether that be friends, peers, family, of course, and then the networking that goes on during your internship and while you're actually on site. As far as friends, family go, you learn of a lot of opportunities from the people that you go to school with who are going out there and also doing the groundwork. And you learn a lot about what people do within your major, and then what are some of the other areas that maybe you weren't thinking of that are still really interesting to you, despite not doing exactly that in your academics. I know for me, I talked to a bunch of family friends after my last internship in the insurance sector. And I told them that I was eager to work for a big multinational company. I have some German background, and I really wanted to keep that as a part of my career. And I was connected to an actuary who connected me to a Penn State alum. And before you know it, you follow all of these things and you get connected to a recruiter. And that really helps you get your foot in the door and shine during an interview. As far as networking, like within the internship, I'm sure for those of you who have had an internship this past summer, it may have been a little more awkward than it has been in the past. Having to get through that barrier of these video conferences, or even in my case, we didn't have video capabilities. So just being okay with talking to somebody who you can't see on the other end. But it's really important that you do it because it helps you hone in within an industry what really interests you. So start within your circle, your managers, your colleagues, start with them, talk about what interests you, see if they have any contacts that they could give you, talk to that person, and then it gets to be like this feedback loop. And what you're doing is really just honing in on what it is that interests you within that company or industry.
It looks like we did have a question come through specific to Troy's future career path. Does Ellie or anybody have anything else to add to the networking piece before we go into that? So the question is around your law school application piece, Troy. I'm sure you read it in the chat box. And again, anyone is welcome to either put it in chat or put it in the question and answer if you have a question. I will say to the student that asked the question, we had a panel in October with current alumni that are in law school that is recorded that you might want to check out as well. They will get you more of the practical experience of what the current experience is like in law school. But Troy, if you could just touch on how your experiences in internships and your extracurriculars are supporting your application to law school, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I kind of had an idea about what kind of law I wanted to do. And then I didn't really, so I worked with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation as well as the United States Attorney's Office. I did both of those at the same time this summer. So I got to see two very different sides of the public sector at one time. And so got to build the skills with, politics and working with politicians and doing all of that work. And then as well as looking from the United States Attorney's Office and really getting to hone in on, do I want to work in criminal law? Is that something I want to do? And so my internship experience really has just worked towards, my purpose is what I want to do as an attorney, if that makes sense. I haven't started the law application yet, but I always keep that in the back of my mind, what's going to make my application stronger? How are these things going to help me? I'm currently looking, I will be looking in the spring to be a paralegal, right? So that's my short end goal while I'm working on my law school applications. So in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, what kind of skills do I need for those jobs? Well, right now I'm working with the Student Legal Services as a legal intern. So, I'm getting a lot of valuable skill sets from there. I'm working with programs that only attorneys work with. I'm getting lingo that I wouldn't necessarily get if I was just, watching, television shows or reading, books that are kind of out of date. So I, currently working towards my short end goal, which is being a paralegal. And then, taking it as a big step is in, okay, what do I want to present on my application? How will I show those skills? So that's what I kind of looked out for when I, am thinking about the internships. How can I set my application aside? Especially right now during COVID, it's going to be, big. Oh, she did these 2 internships during the pandemic. So okay, one step further. Now I have all of these skills and the skill set for, working with the certain programs and having the lingo and, having that relationship with attorneys that I can present positively for being a paralegal.
Great answer. Thank you so much. So let's talk a little bit about the actual search for an internship. Where did you search? How did you search? And what advice do you have for that process specifically? And of course, I'm going to ask you how Penn State helped you do that.
So I'll kick us off. I'm going to, from 2 perspectives, as an undergrad and a graduate student. I'm not sure what mix we have of participants here, so I'll give it a little bit of a flair for the graduate level as well. So in undergrad, I had a very difficult time finding internships because my GPA wasn't very good. Because transitioning from the military to academia and everything, going to college, would kind of hit me really hard. So I hope I can speak to some people that maybe don't have like that perfect GPA. You got to really look outside the box whenever you're trying to find something that's there. For me, one of the things I did was actually I went to a local it was like a recruitment agency in town called the HR office, and they place people into just random jobs around town. And luckily I had the opportunity. They had something come up in my field in HR there. I just kind of always kept it there, always checked their postings on those talent agencies that are out there. and seeing that they had something in-state college for me, working for Gleno Hawbaker, which is just a construction company here in Pennsylvania. And I was just an HR assistant, and it wasn't necessarily a internship that like was dedicated to that, but I was put into that environment that wasn't, necessarily meant to be a training and a learning. It was more like, hey, help us out and learn as you go. So that was kind of me overcoming that step. And as soon as I overcame that difficulty with the GPA, I had another opportunity come up. Again, we talked about networking within your college and talking to your peers and things. I had another opportunity come up in a group me, actually, that was from another LER major who said, hey, the Applied Research Laboratory here on campus is a Navy contracted company. They do a lot of work for the government, but they invited me for an interview and said, hey, please apply here and see everything going on there. It was a very last minute thing. I got very lucky with that. But there's two things there as an undergrad. One, thinking outside the box with those networking opportunities, or excuse me, with the looking outside the box with those talent agencies where you wouldn't normally think of. And two, networking within my college with my peers to see who else was doing what, and constantly talking to my professors, probably too much. Now from the graduate level, it is 100% about networking whenever it comes to the graduate level, for me at least. My first semester, luckily, we were still not COVID, and I was able to go to it was just like a lunch at a park in town where the school or the graduate program was kind of throwing like a cookout, and I just kind of talked with everybody, and I ended up getting to talk to the director of of the program, who said, hey, I know you're a little bit older, you have military experience, maybe go check out these couple opportunities, and what do you think about this? And I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, definitely, I'll apply. So I went and had that discussion. I took myself to a place, and I kind of met with people, and was able to kind of talk to those people and kind of learn about what opportunities they have had, and going on through that at the graduate level. And the great thing about graduate school as well is it's a tighter knit community. You might have maybe only 10 people in your class at a time, or depending on how big your school is, maybe it's more like 30, it depends, that go through your program at the same time. So it gets really close together, and everybody is constantly sharing things in different ways. And if nobody's doing that, maybe you need to be the person to kind of stand up and say, hey guys, I got this opportunities that I'm finding here. What do you think? What do you guys find it? And just kind of poke them a little bit and kind of get that ball rolling. So that's what I would say, like from the undergrad to the graduate level, kind of there. I'm glad I can talk for hours, so I'll stop and let somebody else go.
Thank you, Andrew. That was great advice.
I just have three things that I think help to get you through like the masses, because you're gonna, like Katie was saying, you're really gonna want to spread your net as far as you can. And I think some things to help you with that are making an Excel spreadsheet so you can keep track of all of the different usernames, passwords, people you've met, whether you were accepted, rejected. That's going to help you so much, however you want to break that down. Same thing, do that same sort of thing on your desktop, have folders for different companies, different resumes, because you're going to see by the time you're done your first round of all of this, you're going to have like 20 different resumes and cover letters that are tailored for specific companies. And those are good to have on hand when you go for your interview, or, if you're going to meet a recruiter in person. And then that kind of leads into my third thing. Make sure you have a template of your resume or cover letter that's able to be tailored for specific industry, specific job. Just something with little blanks or little places where you can fill in things that are company specific or industry specific will really help you get organized in applying for all of these internships.
I'm going to echo how important it is, especially right now with so many people applying for the few internships and jobs that there are, to specialize your resume and your cover letter. And I would say, I agree with what Zach's saying, that, there are places where you can really talk about that organization or that position and how you connect with it. However, I would stay away from a template, an actual template. Create your own template, but to stay away from a resume template, because they will drive you crazy in the end, and not all recruiters like them. I will say that sometimes you're applying and it's an artificial intelligence system. So if you haven't taken the time to specialize your cover letter, your resume with those keywords in the job description, it won't ever make it to someone. It won't make it past the computer system. So take that into consideration as well when you are applying. So anyone else on the search and how they navigated it and what they used?
One thing that was big for me, because mine was kind of like I found out about it by my advisor. He like sends a lot of like internship opportunities for history majors, and also so that's been really helpful. And also just like every week or month or whatever, whenever like all of like the internship and like the job listings come from like liberal arts, those are always really helpful and like interesting, because a lot of times like trying to just kind of look online is difficult. So that's helpful to kind of like give you an idea of what's out there. Also, I would echo what Andrew said about like talking to your friends and seeing like in your classmates and seeing what they're doing, because like a lot of times like a lot of the internships I applied to were ones that like I knew of other people doing before, and like maybe thinking like, oh, that seems really interesting, and like talking to them about that. So yeah, just like talk to as many people as you can, and like your friends are a really great resource for that too.
Okay, thank you. I had a question come in the chat, a little bit. I'm going to broaden it a little bit. What was most meaningful for you from those internship experiences that you are now applying to a career in law for you, Troy? The question is specific to, or a career in social services or government or insurance. What meaning did you take from these internships, and how did it help to set you up for your next search?
Okay, sorry, having a hard time coming off mute there. Okay, I would say the most meaningful thing I got out of it, perspective. I feel like a lot of the times we digest a lot of media about, specifically about politics, about law. And I know that I had gotten in a frame of mind where I wasn't really thinking about, so I worked in the victim witness unit for the United States Attorney's Office. That's a huge no. So when I got put in this office, it wasn't necessarily what I was thinking about. It wasn't at the forefront of my mind to think about, what the victims and what the witnesses go through. And that was such a huge thing for me to take in this summer, was to really be able to digest all of that information. And it honestly helped me with my CBCF, the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation internship, because, when you're working with these public sector jobs and you're working with other people who are like-minded towards the same goal, it's really helpful to be able to say, oh, well, I've worked here, I know we see a lot of this, but I've worked here and with these types of people, and this is what I've gotten out of it. So I would definitely say perspective is the biggest thing. I won't talk that much because the next question she's going to ask is my favorite. So
anyone else? I know a lot of you have talked about how it's, all experiences are good experiences, whether it's pushing you forward or sending you in a new direction. And that's kind of what we hope an internship will do for you, and as well as make you very competitive. Okay, I am going to skip ahead because I too like these next couple questions, and want to get into some of the tangible experiences of the internship, and let's talk about the interview process itself. So how did you prepare for the interview process? What advice do you have maybe from a not so good situation? How have you navigated this if you did it virtually? What's some helpful advice in preparing for the interview process for internships? And how has your liberal arts skills come through?
So I would say do your research. not only about the company, the industry, but about yourself as well. They're going to be asking you to do some soul searching. And if you're not prepared for that, it's really hard to do on the spot. Sometimes you can come up with things off the top of your head. Other times you're like a deer caught in headlights. So I would definitely take some time before these interviews to really look within yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are some projects that you can point to that highlight those things? And then as well, like I said, do some research on the company. Just treat it like a conversation. It's as much for you as it is for them. You're trying to find out more about the company, if you're a good fit, and these people on the other end, they're just people. So that was the one thing. I used to think that these things were daunting. Now I really look forward to them. So you can see it comes full circle. Last, I would say just dress appropriately, stay hydrated, and eat a good breakfast, because I know some things in the private sector, they have these big days where they bring you in for hours and hours. You only get snacks and maybe some water. So make sure you eat a good breakfast and definitely stay hydrated, because you do a lot of talking.
Yeah, I'd like to add that definitely before you enter the interview, you want to have done a lot of research on the company. You want to be able to speak to its mission, and you definitely want to be able to speak to each line on your resume and how it connects to what the company does and how you're qualified for each job description. But in addition to that, I think more importantly, and I'm a writing tutor and I work with students who are applying to graduate school into certain jobs. Everyone's qualified. A lot of people are qualified for one position. How the employer chooses the person is based on the personal statement and how they come across uniquely as an individual. And doing some soul searching, like Zach said, is very important. I was running for student government president, and during the debate process, someone asked me what my greatest weakness was, and I completely blanked. I was a deer in headlights, like Zach said. I almost lost the debate due to that. And that's a question you're going to get during an interview. And you'll just want to be able to speak to how the work that you're doing it brings about a passion for you, and how it's fulfilling to you uniquely.
Yeah, oh, Troy, sorry, were you going to speak? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, keep going, Andrew, because I didn't have
Okay.
any interest. I was going to talk about something else, so keep going.
Okay, cool. So so whenever it comes to the interview process itself, as a recruiter myself, and going into that field and having already done it for several years, I can definitely say my interviews are much better, and I get a better sense of who you are whenever you turn it into a conversation, like Zach was saying. If whenever you can really just like, I even if you come in there and you say, "Hey, Andrew, I'm super nervous. Like, hey, I just want to let you know forefront, if I kind of hiccup, or like, I'm gonna respect that. Like, you let me know. It's like, okay, hey, I can cater to the way that I do my interview, so that way I can I can make you feel more comfortable and anything like that, as much as I can in an interview. Um, what I would say is also consider certain whenever if I ask you a question. Um, I don't necessarily want always to have a direct correlation and answer to that question. So let me elaborate. So, for example, if I ask you, do you have, tell me about a time you had to deal with a difficult customer, something like that, something generic. There, I don't necessarily want you to tell me about the time that you worked at the Walmart or anything like that and dealt with a customer, because not everybody's had that opportunity to work with a customer. In your mind, redefine what the word customer means to you, and in your context, and then explain that to me. So, for example, as a recruiter, I'll give that example as it's a good example. Um, my customers as a recruiter would be my candidates, the people that I'm interviewing. Maybe I didn't have a really good interview uh, with that candidate. Maybe it was my fault. I messed up. Something goes wrong. And if I were to use that, say, okay, well, this was my customer and I really messed up. I kind of should have approached this a little bit differently. I should have been better prepared with understanding that international student's name. I should have been more prepared with understanding XYZ. And then I would use that as an experience of how I made a mistake during the interview, and then I corrected that for that candidate. So being able to redefine a word can really frame it, and almost it gives a higher level of intellectual problem solving that is going to show up in that interview. So that's a kind of a very high level, like from a recruiter kind of mentality. And I hope that helps you out a little bit with that. Yeah.
Okay, so just quickly, something I remembered also is like honing in on my writing skills. That I used Milk the Liberal Arts for all that's worth. That's helped me so much, and it's going to help me when I do my law school applications, and it's going to help me as a paralegal. Second, we skipped over one thing because I know we have time, but the Liberal Arts Enrichment Fund, it's like been my secret, my secret all through this time at Penn State. The Enrichment Fund has helped me so much. It helped me when I went abroad. I studied abroad for 10 weeks in France. That was huge. It helped me this summer. The United States Attorney's Office was not paid, so I applied for the Liberal Arts Enrichment Fund. So definitely use the resources that Penn State has. Like they're here for a reason. And who's better to get it than you? Never psych yourself out. Definitely go out, put yourself out there. Good money, so definitely do it. And then also for my applications, I didn't have to do interviews, so I have a very different experience than Zach and Andrew. I didn't have an interview process, so what I had to do was stand out in my application and stand out in my personal statement, which I think Zach touched on a little bit. And I really just had to shine, and show who I was and my ideals and my beliefs throughout the application, and specifically in the writing part of it. If you don't think you're that strong of a writer, take some practice, have friends look over it, have family members look over it, just to critique those small things. But if you are like me and you apply for things and there's no interview process, that's your main focus is going to be that writing process. It's going to be, setting yourself aside from the other applicants. What do you have that maybe somebody else doesn't have? And how can you bring something to the office, to, the work environment that will better enhance the environment that you're going to be with, right? They don't want to just give a whole bunch to you. They want you to bring something them as well. It's got to be a two-partner type of dance. So when you're doing those applications and those writing process, definitely keep that at the forefront of your mind. But I had to talk about the Liberal Arts Enrichment Fund because that is like one of the best things that Penn State has.
Well, thank you. We'll put out a note that spring 2021 applications are now open. If anyone on the line has a spring experience, and that includes virtual internships as well, you are welcome to apply, as Troy said. So there is a lot of generous donors out there. This is one of my main parts of my job is the enrichment fund applications, and I it's such a benefit. I am very proud of this college for the resources they provide to support. Okay, so attendees, the students here on the line, I'm going to remind you that we would love to hear from you and to give some questions. As the panelists have alluded, I have a list of questions, but I would love to hear from you too. If you'd like to dive into interviewing a little bit more or the search process, please just let us know. Let's talk about when you do get the internship. We'll take Troy's segue. How are you budgeting for it? For those of you who might have to relocate, what is your advice on housing or subletting? Or again, the Career Enrichment Network has the application for the enrichment fund. So before many of you will find yourself in an unpaid internship. Unfortunately, it's just the nature of some of the industries. And before you decide not to do it, please always come see us and we can see what we can do. So always know about that. But how did you all navigate the relocation, the summer long expenses and such?
I was virtual and I lived with someone, so anybody else?
I was virtual too, but there was a chance that I would have to go to either New York or go to Chicago, or we have an office in Princeton. So it was a little up in the air for me until COVID happened about where I was going to be. So that was something that I talked closely with my HR people with, and they gave you all sorts of stipends. So whether it be for commuting, if you had to do that, for finding housing. So I would say if you are doing an internship that's not in your immediate area, the HR people and the people who put on your internship are a good place to start. As far as budgeting, often I know for me, for a paid internship, my first paycheck was usually delayed. So it's usually like 2 weeks behind. So if you're counting on that first paycheck, don't count on it. And they'll announce that ahead of time. But those are really the only two things that I can think of as far as those.
Thank you.
If you, for me as well, all of my internships have been paid for in some way or another. But with I was privileged in the way that Microsoft has tremendous resources like out the wazoo with it when it comes to opportunities. So they actually had a relocation specialist that their entire job was to place us in housing and to give us I get like was said with the stipends. We were given a travel stipend as well. Now that was the plan whenever we were going to be transitioning from to Seattle, Washington, and that's a crazy idea to move from Pennsylvania all the way to Washington. But they were tremendous in helping out with that. We actually changed abruptly to online as well. So I already had an apartment in State College that I was renting. So for me, luckily, I was able to stay here and just kept my current lease and everything. But what they did do was offer some funding to help with any kind of like work from home needs. So if I actually bought it was enough that I was able to get a new computer desk. So nothing fancy or anything too crazy, but I was able to get a new computer desk and a new computer chair to kind of be able to have a comfortable space to work in. And they were like, hey, we want you to feel as comfortable as possible when it comes to that kind of stuff. So just working with your HR folks to see if they have anything like that. But I've been looking for apartments in Seattle to move there permanently, so I could speak to that if anybody had any questions about moving in that way. But so that would be there for you as well.
And yeah, I was lucky in my internship that like the park offered housing free, so that was really nice. So and I also got a stipend from Penn State like for other expenses, and like because it was like my job over the summer and it was unpaid, that stipend really helped. But a lot of my friends were in like DC or in New York, and one thing that like a lot of them did to like help find housing was like they lived in dorms from like GW or like NYU or things like that. And I feel like a lot of my friends in big cities, if like you're looking at that, like dorms are a really great option because like they have programs for students or like people like doing internships. So like, and then like when I was hoping to be in DC last summer, like that was kind of my plan because like it worked really well for them. But yeah.
And I just want to say that's something that's like super, important, and you don't get all the money. I would definitely say look at internship opportunities that include that, like Andrew had that, or like the Congressional Black Caucus. Although I was online, it was set up so that when I would have been in person, they would have been giving me a stipend and they would have been giving me housing. So and that is a huge rivalry for the USAO for me, because I'm like, oh, this place is giving me money and they're giving me housing. So definitely include that into your factors for your internship experience.
We had a question come in. Thank you so much. How do you deal with rejections while applying for various opportunities?
Yeah, I was typing one out. As a writer, I have a lot of experience in the realm. First, I will just say that, so like you could be the class president in high school. You could have a perfect SAT score, perfect grades, an internship or two under your belt. If you apply to Harvard and get rejected, It might not be because you were inadequate, but because the person who beat you out played lacrosse and they're looking for someone to fill the team. So sometimes when you get rejected, it's not because of your personal inadequacies. As a writer, I've been rejected many times. Now, my latest op-ed was published by the Philadelphia Inquirer, and that looks really great. But that actually came about because I'd been rejected by 12 different publications. But the Philadelphia Inquirer happened to see me writing about a certain thing in my article and said, well, we don't like the article you sent, but we would like you to write on this other thing. And they invited me to do that. And so sometimes when you apply to a job, they might not hire you, but they'll think you were a good interview. And I have a friend who this happened to just today, and they'll refer you elsewhere because they think you're a good candidate.
Good point. Allie?
Yeah, I also so like I kind of like already kind of mentioned this, but like last summer I did not have an internship for like a combination of like either got rejected or like COVID canceled a lot of the internships I was applying to. So that was kind of like rough because I was like, oh man, like my last summer before I graduate. But I still kind of like took it. I still interviewed with a ton of different people throughout the whole process and like applied to different things and like got experience in that way. And like a lot of the interviews, like I definitely like, you know, felt myself improving throughout all of that too. And then I guess just like recognizing that like you can still like make the most of it. Like you're not like, I don't know, like I still took classes last summer and did other things like that. And then like applied for like actual jobs. So like even though like you get rejected, that there's still like it's probably like for a reason, and like you just got to keep like going and like keep applying because like, eventually something will work out. And like as long as you're like persistent and don't let it like get to you, because a lot like what you said, like it's not you, a lot of times it's like the other person was just like a better fit in whatever way. So like just keep going and like don't get discouraged. Like I got rejected from so many internships, but just keep going.
I would say don't let the fear of rejection stop you from applying to a job that is going to be amazing. So, perfect example is my experience with Microsoft. Where I come from, people don't get jobs at Microsoft. That doesn't happen. That happens in movies and stuff. So, there was a little bit of hesitance in the beginning to even apply because like, well, that's Microsoft. I'm not that good. I'm not good enough to get through that. I'm just going to get rejected. What's the point? Well, I put my entire self behind that, put everything, cover letter, whole nine, and ended up getting interview. And then it was like, okay, well, I got the interview, but I'm not going to get the job. And then you get that call and you get it. So you never know what's going to happen when you apply. Don't let the fear of rejection stop you from applying somewhere. And at the same time, don't let even if you're not 100% qualified for the position, let's say there's one particular program language that you don't know that you need to apply that they're looking for, apply to it anyway because they might be able to teach you that on the job. There might be something that is like, okay, we're looking for 3 years of experience. It's like, okay, we're looking for 3 years. I only have 2.5, or I only have 2, or I only have 1.5. Take that into consideration and still apply because many times as recruiters do, we'll see that and we'll be like, okay, well, you don't have as much experience, but the experience you do have is really amazing. So let's go ahead and I can probably waive that 4-year one and just kind of look past it if it's not set in stone. Now some jobs are set in stone and you can't really do much about that, but there are jobs out there that are not going to be as strict on that, even though they've put it up there. This is just a preference. So don't be afraid to apply to something and that fear of rejection. And to answer your question more directly about how do you deal with rejection, I applied to in undergrad just everything under the sun. Even I knew I was going to get rejected from it 100%. And it was kind of desensitized me to the rejection letter at some point because I had done like 30, 40, 50 over those few years. And I was like, okay, well, it's just another rejection. That's okay. I'll get the next one. And go through. And so that's kind of how I dealt with that. Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes there won't be a rejection letter, right? And sometimes that stings a little bit more because there's still that what if. But no, great. Definitely keep going. What I'm hearing from employers, speaking a little bit about what Ellie was saying, is that they want to know what you're doing in the meantime as you're applying, as COVID is happening and the pandemic and the resources are or not as fruitful. What are you doing to be better? What are you doing to engage? I would anticipate that being an interview question in some capacity for all of you in the future for an internship or for a job, and how you handled that. I would also suggest maybe on your end, if it is a question for you or it's something you want to ask, that's a question for that organization at the end of your interview. Do you have any questions for us? How have you navigated the pandemic? How, what are some things you've incorporated into your employee resources? Any other questions out there at this time? I think to take us out, you've all touched, my last question is about that virtual experience. I think just to summarize, if you want to share anything we weren't able to talk to, or some helpful advice that you wanted to share, we can end with that point if we don't see any more questions. I will say that what I'm hearing from everyone is the importance of the search, whether it be in those job boards like Nittany Lion Careers or LinkedIn, usajobs.gov, but also the importance of the network and making the connections. And I think when I meet with students so often, we talk about, the rejection, we talk about how many applications are out there. And that's where we then add in that piece of networking and how do you combine the two. And everybody gets sick of me saying it, but I don't want you to wait for your future internship or your future job to appear on a job board. I want you to go out and use that Penn State network and connect with people, not only to build yourself and to do that self-assessment that the panelists talked about, that's so important, but to also build that network to then provide opportunities for you. And in the long run, you're going to provide opportunities to your network as you grow in your field. So with that said, I also, Andrew, can talk a lot about this. So I will turn it over for our panelists if they have any parting words.
I will just say that I'm sure that we are all open to fielding any questions or fielding any advice you may want from us outside of this. Like, we're all students too, we're all people too. We're happy to help out. So that's just one thing. And then also, I think that, not that liberal arts students get a bad rap, but we kind of get looked over a lot as far as the private sector goes sometimes. I know for Andrew and LER, it's a little different because that's very niche and that there are jobs open for that. But sometimes when people see a liberal arts degree, they're a little wary. But my liberal arts degree is probably like the best thing that happened to me. I think, and I think Ellie can probably attest to this from economics. I kind of look at the whole holistic approach, that it's really like a case study in different things. When I'm taking classes in anthropology, when I'm taking classes in political science, I can always bring it back to my economics degree. And because of that, I become a better employee and a better student. So I wouldn't let that deter you from, applying to any jobs or going for anything that you might feel because your liberal arts degree hinders you. Moving on to the virtual environment, it was a little weird, but it's not so much different than what we're doing right now in these last couple of weeks at school. And the nice thing about that is everybody's in the same boat as far as the organizations go. So it makes you more comfortable reaching out to people. Maybe you get to reach out to people who you weren't normally comfortable reaching out with when you're at a desk, at a location. So it kind of enables you to broaden your horizons, expand your network to people that you might have not reached out to prior. I would say also because of that, reach out to your manager. Check-ins are really awesome because you can feel like you're stranded out here on an island if you're not keeping in touch with the people who you work closely with. And that's also a great segue to feedback is really important. And those continuous conversations are really important to have. So schedule those coffees, try to make an effort to keep in touch with your colleagues. maybe even outside of work if you feel comfortable with that. I know my other interns and we did happy hours every week. That was really awesome because, we got to connect on a different level outside of work. So yeah, just hang in there. Hopefully this is only temporary, and but also make the most of it, because there definitely are silver linings.
Just quickly, for myself, I made, connections with people that were in positions that I wanted to, someday be in. And the biggest thing that was stressed to me this summer was, finding a mentor and somebody that's been in your field and has been in your shoes and can kind of guide you through all of those things. I didn't have that, but I did have friends that had went through similar processes, and I could reach out to them and ask, what was your workload like? What did you think of this? And then once I was able to get into the fields that I wanted to be in, I could then ask more questions through those connections. So it was kind of like, I had to put myself out there in the beginning, and just ask the questions, because if you don't know, who's going to tell you? And sometimes things you can't find on Google. So if you know that people have been in the positions that you want to, reach out, ask questions. Never hurts to ask. And then once you get in there, definitely watch your network flow. I didn't have any LinkedIn experience before this summer, literally none. I never thought it was important, just because and it's so weird that I say that, because now I'm like, I check LinkedIn all the time. I love LinkedIn, but I never used it ahead of time. And that was like one of the best things I think I got as a panelist today was, hearing Zach and Andrew talk about how LinkedIn was so important for them. And so weird because I just didn't have that. So definitely use those resources. Connecting with, people during the virtual experience was weird because you're not in person, and I'm more of an in-person person than I am in like a text type of situation. So that was hard for me in the beginning, right? But I did find people that I can make meaningful connections with, and we stay up to date. And that's how it's going to be. You may be in a group of 60, 80 people, and you may not be able to be friends with or make connections with everyone, but find a few, right, that you're going to keep up to date about your life. They can keep you up to date, and that way you are not feeling so alone throughout the process.
Yeah, and to kick off here with that, the one thing that I would say that helped me most from the liberal arts college and Penn State in general, was all the career opportunity, the career services that are out there. So specifically for me, if you're a freshman right now watching this, or a sophomore, and you're kind of trying to figure out what you want to do and where you want to take your career, definitely use the Bank of America Career Services guys. They're not just for resume reviews. They actually have career counseling, which I did for 2 years while I was an undergrad taking my gen eds. So I did that, and that changed. That's what got me into LER, and that's what got me inevitably into HR and doing what I'm doing now. They help guide me through like the process by deciding like, okay, well, here, take the strengths finder, take this, talk to me about where you want to be and what success looks like to you. Different things like that were extremely helpful for me. So I always throw out the guys at Career Services whenever I get a chance, because they got me where I am today. Now in the virtual field, with the one key thing that I would say is make sure to have set a schedule and a to-do list. Use your calendar if you have to block time off on your calendar. You say, okay, I'm going to work on XYZ project from 10 a.m. until noon, and that's the project I'm going to work on during that time. And setting that time frame and blocking off your calendar so that way other people can't set meetings with you if that's an option for your organization. Just making sure to have that, because working from home, it's very easy whenever the computer that I'm like doing work on is also the computer that has all my video games on it or something like that, or YouTube is just a click away, and there's nobody over my shoulder watching me, other than my cat sometimes. But the making sure that you have that set up, and making sure that you're getting sleep at night is going to be tremendously helpful to make sure you're sticking to a schedule. And that's going to help you be successful. It takes some discipline to do, because not everybody's going in the real adult world. Nobody's going to be watching over you to make sure that you're getting to work on time and making sure you're showing up to work on time. Making sure that you have a schedule set up for yourself is going to be tremendously helpful in being successful in a virtual or work from home or anything like that kind of mindset. Yeah.
All right. Well, if no one else has anything else to share, it looks like we've gone over our time anyway. So thank you all to the panelists for being here. I appreciate your time and attention. Good luck to everybody through the rest of the semester. I know it's almost over. It's almost over. And we're excited for you as well. So please let us know if you have any questions. Like Andrew mentioned, Career Services is still available for you virtually, and that's exactly what our office does too in the Career Enrichment Network. So take advantage of all the multiple resources of Penn State. Good luck. It's nice to see you all. Thanks so much.
Thank you,
All right,
Katie.
thank you so
Thanks,
much.
everybody.
Thank you.
Cheers.